All right, this is my quick little PowerPoint on conflict resolution. Your worksheet should go in order, and pretty much each slide is going to answer a question almost. And at the end, there's a little video clip that I'll attach and give you permission to watch so that you can see an example of conflict resolution. It's not like a real example, it's semi-hilarious, but if you watch the show The Office, you'll enjoy it. But anyway, this will be quick. Next week we'll do violence prevention. It's the same kind of thing, same worksheet, and then you'll watch a documentary and take notes on that. But these assignments should be fairly easy for everyone. Do the next slide. So, define conflict. If you do not have this exact definition in your notes, it's going to be wrong. It's a disagreement between people with opposing viewpoints, ideas, or goals. And we're going to learn the difference between conflict resolution versus our refusal skills, where we learn to say no. So we have small conflicts versus bigger conflicts. A lot of people take small conflicts a lot closer to heart than they should, but we need to realize that, there are worse things that could happen. If you have a small disagreement with someone, it's probably worth letting it go if it's not that big of a deal. But some people are stubborn. So an argument to me would be a small conflict. I don't care what you're arguing about. If it's not life or death, it's not a huge problem. A big conflict I can think of is war or violence. Try to come up with different examples on your worksheet that you would think of being small or a big conflict, but war and violence is definitely bigger because now we have life-threatening situations on our hands. There are two different types of conflicts. There's interpersonal and internal. So the difference would be that interpersonal, and if you think of it, has the word person in there, happens between two or more people. So you all know that it could be you in a group and the whole group doesn't agree, or it could just be you and one person having an argument, but the key word is that person, so it has to be you versus someone else. And then we can also have conflicts with ourselves. So even just decision making, we talked about decision making skills at the beginning of the year, if you remember, kind of like a health review, and you really have to think about, what's the outcome? Am I making the right decision? You list your options. You thought, is it legal? Is it safe? Is it healthful? Would my parents approve? So internally, being in your own mind, you're conflicting with yourself about something. It could be something as simple as, what do I wear today? And you can't decide, which is also decision making. But then you also might have this conflict of, who do I listen to, this person or this person? So internally with yourself, interpersonal person is with two or more people. Try to think of a conflict that you can have at home versus a conflict at school. Try to make them not the same. You can obviously have the same problems at home that you have at school, but I thought at home you're probably going to argue with parents or siblings. You could also argue with friends at home, but it's less likely. You're more likely to argue with friends or teachers at school because usually teachers are not at your home unless your mom is your teacher. Then you have a problem. But try to think of different examples. What other conflicts happen at home? What other conflicts do you see happening at school? What is a bully? This is the start of conflicts a lot of the time, and a bully is someone who picks on individuals who are smaller or weaker. It's also repetitive. It's not like a one-time nasty comment like, oh, that one time that person called me a, jerk. It's repeated. They're constantly pushing you down and putting you down because it makes them feel better about themselves. This is not a good thing. I don't tolerate bullying, so if I see it, I will address it with you, but it's not good to be a bully. It definitely doesn't make people feel good, and it definitely has conflict that comes with it. What is the difference between labeling and being prejudiced? Again, this kind of comes with the bullying stance. I also asked you an example of what does a bully look like, and you could describe someone. I don't want names. So I've had people draw pictures. So like in your own eyes, what does a bully look like? I'm sure we all have different examples. But then when people go into bullying and they use their language, they sometimes label, but then also we could be being prejudiced, which is very bad. So labeling is just name calling. So if I'm bullying you, I'm saying like you're a loser, you're a jerk, you have no friends, blah, blah, blah. You could label them a nerd or a geek or a jock or a prep, whatever. So that's more name calling, that's more bullying. It gets a little worse when we get into prejudice. This is a negative opinion of another race. So this is why we don't joke about making jokes and saying like, that's racist. Like it's actually a substantial problem. It takes bullying to a whole nother level, and it is a bad thing. And people have been suspended for making these racial comments. And even if you don't have a negative opinion of another race, but you're making fun of it or talking down because of someone else's race, then that is surpassed bullying on a whole nother level, and it is way worse. So know the difference between just name calling and then actually making racial slurs towards another race, because there is a difference and one is substantially worse than the other. Name 3 ways that you can prevent conflict from building. So you can probably think of some things you can do. Someone's arguing with you. You're obviously going to disagree. What can you do to prevent this conflict from getting out of hand? So if you're someone that doesn't like to, get in arguments, a lot of people like to avoid conflict. What do you do to avoid it? We don't want to just ignore it altogether. There's a difference from avoiding and just ignoring, because if you just stuff your feelings deep down, nobody is getting anything out of that. So you could learn to understand your own feelings. What is the root of the problem? Is this person making you mad, or are you mad about something that happened earlier in the day and now you're taking your feelings out on them? We talked about that before. You can keep your conflicts private. A lot of people have conflicts with their friend, and then they tell their other friend who tells another friend, and now everybody's mad at that one person, and this just builds into something that doesn't need to happen. It could also, like the game Telephone, turn into something that wasn't even said in the first place. So when you whisper around the circle trying to send a message around, almost 100% of the time what the first person said is not how it ends up. So try to keep your conflicts private. Don't post a bunch of stuff on social media. Being mean to other people is just going to turn it into something that doesn't have to be. Avoid using drugs and alcohol. A lot of people get angry when they drink or on drugs. We're going to talk about drugs and health. It also hinders your decision-making skills, your ability to think clearly. You're probably going to say and do things that you wouldn't normally do when you were not under the influence. Show others respect. Put yourself in their shoes. Would they like what you're saying? Did they say what they said to you because of a situation they're in? Just overall, try to respect others so we can avoid these conflicts from getting out of hand. You can learn to accept others. Again, we don't want to be prejudiced. We don't want to label people. We just want to learn to accept people for who they are. And then, again, put yourself in their situation. How would you like being in their situation? Could you come at it differently? Could you just talk to them about whatever's bugging you rather than raising this conflict to something that it doesn't have to be? So conflict resolution is solving a disagreement in a way that satisfies both sides. So if you think about a recent conflict you had, maybe it was what the family wanted for dinner and your sister wanted macaroni, but you really wanted pizza. How was it resolved? Or did this conversation turn into a full-on boxing match because you really wanted pizza. Let's hope that didn't happen. And we resolve the conflict in a way that satisfies both sides. Maybe your mom comes in. Usually a third party can help solve conflict, but maybe she says, well, tonight we can make macaroni, tomorrow we can have pizza. Then everybody agrees, it satisfies both sides. You just have to wait a day to get pizza. Not the end of the world. Or you say, if you clean your room, then you can play video games, instead of you and your mom just screaming that you don't want to do your homework or you don't want to clean your room. Usually there's a way to resolve that satisfies. Now, when we talked about our refusal skills, we were straight up saying no. This is not the same as refusal skills. If your mom says clean your room and you're straight up refusing, it's not going to go well for you. So try to solve it in a way that satisfies both sides. Obviously, don't say anything that is out of the question, like, well, if I clean my room, I get a new puppy. Like, no, that's taking it a little too far. So, we don't want to have unnecessary arguments and emotions stirred up if we can't. So solve the disagreement in a way that satisfies everybody. You can do this by using the acronym TALK. When we talked about our refusal skills, we used STOP. It was S-T-O-P. Say no, tell why not, offer another solution, and then if that doesn't work, you promptly leave. That would be things for like drugs and alcohol and things that are going to put you in a dangerous situation. If it's not a dangerous situation, you can talk it out with someone. You can take a time out, walk away. If you're mad, if you got a text message from someone and you want to respond right away in an angry way that's going to just turn into a big conflict, maybe just take time away and come back and answer later when you've had time to cool off and think. Allow each person to tell their side. Maybe there's something going on their side of the story that you don't know. So ask them. Try to get the whole story. Then maybe it was a whole misunderstanding and there's really no conflict. Let each person ask questions. So if I say, oh, well, why don't you want macaroni for dinner? And you tell me, well, I had it for lunch, then maybe I'm like, oh, well, I didn't know that. So, because we go to different schools, so now I feel bad making you eat macaroni twice. I guess we can have pizza tonight and macaroni tomorrow. So the person's not saying no just because they want to make you mad. Maybe literally they had macaroni for lunch and they don't want to eat macaroni again, Asking questions can really clear up a lot of situations. I do that in gym when, kids are refusing or not participating. I'm like, what's going on? Like, why don't you want to do this? And it kind of helps me understand and clear up situations before I just get mad and say, you failed gym. That's not fair to anybody. And then if you can't come up with a solution, keep brainstorming. Maybe this person is dead set on macaroni. They don't care if you had it for lunch. Maybe because no one can decide, you don't get macaroni, you don't get pizza. Mom said, we have hot dogs. That's what we eat instead because you two can't decide. And then, come to agreement. Or if your friends want to play football and you want to play basketball, maybe you play something else because no one can agree. Maybe you combine the games and come up with a new game. So keep brainstorming. Try to solve the conflict with as little conflict as possible for everyone's sake. I will post this clip so you can watch it. I just added some extra credit questions about it. If you watch The Office, my husband watches the show nonstop. I personally don't like it. I think it's stupid, but it's got really good examples for almost everything I teach in health. So this is going to be conflict resolution. Michael Scott is the main character over here. He's not very intelligent, but he's going to try to solve the disagreement going on between these two. What Pam says ends up being a really good idea for having a resolution, and he resolves it, but in a really stupid way. So enjoy the clip, answer the extra credit questions. Let me know if you have any other questions, but this should be a pretty simple assignment for you guys. So have a great week.